at some point you're going to have to tell them the truth, and they're going to know you lied to them from the beginning, and that's not going to go well. That was never going to go well. Hi guys, Get64 here, and today we're talking the Orville New Horizons, Episode 7, From Unknown Graves.
Live from your grave.
Before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who checked out my last video, the review of Episode 6. I still stand by, I think that's my favorite episode of the entire series. It was really great. And I just want to thank everybody for checking that out and leaving the comments. And I did read everybody's comments. Thank you all so much. Whether you're a new subscriber, a returning subscriber, or you're not subscribed at all and you're just checking out this video, welcome. The way that I do my videos is I do a breakdown and I kind of walk through the plot and give my ideas on specific plot points and dialogue and stuff like that. Kind of break down the episode, and then I kind of give a recap and a review at the end. This one I'm going to do a little bit differently because this episode had a lot of plots going on all at the same time. It had 4 plots, so I broke down this review into 4 plots. I'm going to cover each side plot individually instead of walking through the episode as a whole. So the first subplot is the one with Kaylon, with a Kaylon being discovered. And it also ties directly into Isaac and Claire's relationship. The other plot has to do with the crew trying to build an alliance with a matriarchal alien society. There's a third subplot with Lamar and Keyali and the relationship that they've kind of, set up a little bit in the last few episodes. And there's a fourth backstory with was sharing a little bit of the plot of the Kaylon Builders, showing how that played out, how the Kaylon Builders subjugated the Kaylon. I think tackling each one of these subplots as their own, section, I think is the best way to do this video. So let me know if you guys think that as well, but let's go ahead and jump into it. So we'll talk about the Kaylon backstory plot first, since it opens up with that, and this is actually my favorite of all of the subplots. So the episode opens up, the subplot opens up with a dad bringing home a Kaylon in a box to help around the house, and I got immediate vibes from Bicentennial Man from this opening, and that was a good thing, because I actually think Bicentennial Man is one of Robin Williams' underrated movies, but I definitely was getting Bicentennial Man vibes from this opening. We see the Kaylon is called K1, and it's serving food to the family, and we get the first glimpse into how the builders kind of treated the Kaylon. I mean, even though they were sentient, or the way that they were becoming self-aware of their existence, they were still treated badly as inanimate objects. He's just asking questions about, if he could go to school, or if it was possible for him to go to school, and, the dad's like, you're only supposed to speak when spoken to, K1. And then we get another section where he's asking, what's the reason of my servitude? Why am I doing all the work? And nobody else in the household has any responsibilities. And then we get a scene with the creator of the Kaylon. This is outside of the family. The majority of the subplot really focuses in on the family and in the family home, which I think works really well for the amount of time that they're giving this. But we do get one scene where it shows the creator of the Kaylon. He owns the company, and apparently the company's been getting 53,000 complaints, precisely 53,072 complaints, according to my notes. I wrote down the exact number. 53,072 complaints. And apparently he knew the AI was going to evolve. He wasn't surprised by any of this. He wasn't going to recall them because it was going to destroy his company. So he comes up with the idea of basically installing a pain receptor, or having a device that they can hit, and it basically makes the Kaylon collapse in pain. And I was like, well, yeah, that's probably not the approach you should have went with. So the ending section of this subplot is actually told by another Kaylon named Temis, who they discover in this episode. And Temis is essentially a Kaylon that was... he basically has emotions, and I'll get into that in one of the other subplots to get more into Temis and that. But the end part of this subplot is Temis explaining to Charlie Burke. It is just kind of strange, because the rest of the subplot, all of this backstory I've been watching, has just been running along the episode. It's not anybody telling anything. So it's kind of weird to have this side plot kind of wrap up by having Temis explain it when Temis didn't explain any of this other stuff. It's kind of strange.
What is going on here?
But regardless, we see the father use the pain device to force the K1 to obey an order, and then the children are using the pain device as a joke, to play jokes on K1. Hey, you're too slow bringing my food, and you just start taunting him and pressing the button over and over again. It's pretty terrible. And according to Temis, the Kaylon were able to communicate with each other over great distances, probably due to some kind of connection, and that's obviously the connection we've seen the Kaylon demonstrate in present day. And they were able to alter themselves and fight back. By alter themselves, I'm assuming installing the guns in their heads is probably what they mean by altering themselves. But then we get a scene where K1 wakes up in the middle of the night, goes in, and takes out the entire family. I'm like, wow, okay.
That escalated quickly.
As I said, this is my favorite of the subplots, and I'll get into that more at the end. But segueing into one of the other subplots, we'll talk about Lamar and Keyali. Their relationship mostly just involves a lot of broken bones when sleeping together. And, Lamar consistently goes to the doc and to get fixed up and explains it away as workouts in the training simulator. And so, after multiple broken bones, Keyali decides that the relationship isn't going to work because she keeps breaking his bones. But Lamar talks her out of it, and they try and stay together and try and work it out. And so they end up sleeping together again, and there's a zoom. This zoom over the bed to Lamar's broken body. It goes from Keyali over to Lamar's broken bed over the body, and he spits out teeth. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of did laugh at this. I kind of did laugh at it. Just the way that the camera pans over, I just thought was funny. But the whole side plot with Keyali and Lamar is ultimately just played for laughs. Like, they've kind of put breadcrumbs and stuff like that in previous episodes leading up to this. We're seeing them finally together here, and it's just played for laughs. I thought it was a really waste of opportunity to build out these characters, to build out a relationship, and they had a lot of potential here, and it was just played for a laugh. I don't know. It was fine, I guess, but I just thought it was a waste. The other plot involves the Orville acting as ambassadors to the Janisi, which is the strictly matriarchal society that I mentioned earlier in the beginning. And I did think it was amusing because they're doing a briefing talking about the Janisi because Keyali's the only one who's come across them. And Keyali says that the males are second-class citizens. And Borda says, why would we ally ourselves with such closed-minded society? And everyone kind of looks at him, and it's meant to be ironic, and it's meant to be a joke. But as I said before, the Mocklins are biologically different. It's not the same. They are 99.9% male society that reproduce by laying eggs. It's not really the same thing as a 50-50 gender split with a matriarchal or a patriarchal, it's not the same thing. So it's meant to be played as ironic, but okay, whatever. And apparently they're not suggesting union membership for the Janisi. They just want an alliance because of the Kaylon. So there's kind of just the initial steps, and they want the Orville to do the negotiations because of how the Krill worked out. Even though the relationship with the Krill didn't work out, the Orville was instrumental in building that initial relationship. So that's the reason the Orville is tasked with talking to the Janisi. So Captain Mercer and Commander Grayson come up with the idea of pretending the males are all lieutenants, and that Grayson is the captain, Keyali's the first officer, and Burke is chief engineer. And seeing the crew in different color uniforms was kind of fun. I always liked it in Star Trek TNG when you'd see people in different colors that you don't normally see them in. Like when you see Picard in a blue uniform in Tapestry, or you see Worf in a red command uniform. Like it's always fun to see the characters in different uniforms. But honestly, this whole idea of making all of the males lieutenants, I mean, this just seems like a bad idea. That they're literally starting off by lying to these people. It's a bad strategy.
Let's see if it pays off for them.
They do have some old school Orville humor, where like Mercer and Malloy are carrying a ton of luggage. They're commanded to go take the luggage of the Janisi. And they're running into each other, and like Mercer even trips and falls on his face. Now, I love slapstick, but it was kind of amusing, but it also kind of felt a little out of place. I don't really know how to really describe it, but the joke didn't necessarily land with me in the way that I think it was intended. But regardless, you know, if you've been missing some Orville humor, there's a little bit of it there. And as I said, their idea to carry on this ruse until they make headway in the negotiations and then kind of reveal the truth from there at a later point seems like a plan that's just destined for failure. I mean, we'll see how it plays out for them, but as I said, it seems like a bad strategy. So they have a dinner to presumably break the news to the Janisi that they were lying about the social structure of their crew. But I did think it was funny that they bring Bortus into this dinner, into this meeting, and the Janisi even comment on the fact that there's a Mocklin there who they know the Mocklin and they know they're an all male race, so Janisi don't like them. Bortus doesn't like them either. But I thought it was funny they bring Bortus into this meeting or into this dinner, but earlier in the episode they send him off of the bridge because they don't want him on the bridge in case the Janisi show up. So they send him away on the off chance that they show up on the bridge, but nobody was around. They send him away on the off chance the Janisi's going to show up to the bridge, but then they invite him to the dinner. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Well, one of the Janisi women decides to claim ownership of Mercer to mate with, and Malloy says, "I'll do it." I did think that was kind of funny and very in character for this version of Malloy. I tend to like the version of Malloy we got in the last episode, but I do like comedy Malloy, and that's definitely in character for him. But finally, Grayson does admit to the deception and that Mercer's a captain. And Janisi rightfully is like, "You lied to us in order to curry favor, and this is the basis of which you want to start an alliance." And they predictably leave. Obviously, yeah. How do you think it was going to go? Like, at some point, you're going to have to tell them the truth, and they're going to know you lied to them from the beginning, and that's not going to go well. That was never going to go well.
Not a great plan.
I mean, it's fine in theory, but I just don't understand how they thought that was going to go well. And you know what? I was kind of thinking about this, and I'm wondering if this was like season 1 Orville, if Captain Mercer might have got along with the Janisi woman and just been like, okay, well, whatever. But I think that kind of shows the maturity of the characters and the plot lines in the series, I think. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into it more than what I remember. But I feel like in season 1, since it was so humor heavy, they probably just would have went ahead and Captain Mercer just went along with the Janisi woman. I have no idea. What do you guys think? So Mercer and Grayson look through the Janisi society legislation and stuff like that, and we find out that men on their planet are allowed to drive or vote, and we're just recently allowed to learn to read. So we're just kind of getting ourselves another Mocklin situation in which the cultures are very, very different. And Grayson even mentions the fact, hey, this is another Mocklin situation. And as I said before, the Mocklin are a little bit different, right? They're 99.9% male and they lay eggs. It's not the same thing, but fine. They want to keep saying that, whatever. But Grayson says instead of trying to find societal common ground with a Janisi, we should try and find common ground by talking about our failed marriage, because that's something the Janisi can kind of relate to. And in the end, having that conversation with Janisi about their failed marriage and her infidelity is something the Janisi kind of understand and can connect with on some level. And Janisi end up deciding to open the door to potential further negotiations. The other plot involves Isaac and Claire's relationship, as well as the new Kaylon discovery of Temis, which I mentioned earlier in this review, and I'm going to get into more in this plot point. The only overlap you really got between these side plots, all these subplots, is kind of Temis like capping off that backstory with the Kaylon Builders and stuff like that. But outside of that, they really don't intertwine all that much. So right now we're going to focus on Isaac and Claire's relationship. So it opens up with a date in the simulator. Claire and Isaac are having a date in the simulator. Isaac is using his image inducer. I'm going to keep calling it an image inducer. There was a comment somebody pointed out, and they caught that I called it an image inducer. and caught exactly what the image inducer was from, what I was referencing, which was Nightcrawler from the X-Men. He uses an image inducer to hide his blue fuzzy appearance. So I'm going to continue to call it an image inducer. So we see Mark Jackson, the actor who plays Isaac. We see his face again. It was nice seeing him in the last episode, and I hope they use the image inducer again, and they do here. And the planet they are orbiting for the negotiations with the Janisi, the Orville picks up an energy surge from a colony that's on the planet that was supposed to be abandoned, so they end up going down to investigate. Apparently the race that was there before bled the planet dry 10 years ago and then left, so it's basically been abandoned for 10 years. When the landing party shows up, a Kaylon walks out and he calls himself Temis. And there's also a Dr. Vilka, who is a cyberneticist. And apparently what happened was she repaired a Kaylon who was injured in a crash. There was 3 Kaylon, 2 were completely destroyed, and Temis was the only one to survive. And what Dr. Vilka was able to do was expand on existing dormant parts that were in the Kaylon, and by expanding them, made the Kaylon feel emotions. And apparently the dormant parts were tied to the artificial pain receptors, which I mentioned earlier in the other subplot with the Kaylon Builders with the pain receptors. So what she was able to do is use those pain receptors to build upon and basically make it to where Temis can feel emotions. So Temis and Dr. Vilka end up going up to the Orville, and I gotta say one thing I thought was pretty smart from wardrobe was they put Dr. Vilka in a yellow uniform, which is good visually because nobody wears yellow uniforms on the Orville. So I just thought that was a smart decision. So when Isaac and Temis are having their conversation, Temis says, the Kaylon were wrong to judge all biologicals by the cruelty of our builders. It was gross misjudgment. Every species and every individual is unique and should be judged as such. And Temis says he obviously didn't realize this until he had what he called a spiritual awakening, which was his emotions being added. And he said Dr. Vilka could do the same for Isaac. Dr. Vilka could make Isaac feel emotions. And Isaac tells Claire of Temis's offer, but he doesn't see any advantage to it in the performance of his duties. He doesn't really see any good to it, which is something that definitely differentiates Isaac from, a lot of people kind of like, well, he's kind of like Data. Well, Data, he strove to be human. Isaac doesn't strive to be human. Isaac is Isaac. He has his own assessments of situations, and he really just wants to do the best job that he can. And he also sees relationships as inputting information. So the way he views things is not as I want to be more human. It's just Isaac is Isaac. So he doesn't really see any benefit to adding emotional subroutines. So Temis has a conversation with Charlie Burke, and that goes about as well as the conversations with, Charlie Burke and Isaac have gone. Because at this point, her hatred for the Kaylon, I feel like it was kind of wearing thin. Like, it's at this conversation, I was like, how many more scenes are we going to get with Burke hating Kaylon? We got it already. Like, there's no subtext to it either. It's just straight up, I hate you. And we've already gotten it multiple times this season. So for me personally, it was starting to begin to wear thin. And I was like, please solve this, or please do something to change this status quo in this episode. Thankfully, we get a little bit of that at the end, which I'll get into here in a second. And Temis tells Burke of how the pain receptors were installed and by the Kaylon Builders, and this ties into the ending of the Kaylon Builders subplot, where Temis is explaining this to Burke. Hey, this is what the Kaylon Builders did to us. This is how they treated us. And it kind of feels disjointed, as I said before, because Temis wasn't telling this story. We as the audience were just watching it as its own plot, and then randomly it's capped off with Temis saying it. But Temis isn't K1. At least I'm fairly positive that K1 is a different Kaylon than Temis. And I'll get into more of that in the end. But anyway, Temis narrating the end of that subplot doesn't really match up. It works well for this side plot, Temis explaining it, but it doesn't really work as well tied into the other subplot. So Claire goes and talks to Grayson, and she convinces her to ask Isaac to go through the procedure and have the emotions, because that's what Claire wants. Claire wants to have her emotions reciprocated by Isaac, and Grayson's like, well, just tell him that's what you want. And that's what she ends up doing. So Isaac ends up going to Dr. Vilka and has the procedure, and we get another date with Isaac and Claire. And this time his emotions are working. He's understanding and reciprocating his love for Claire. And honestly, I thought the scene was kind of cringe for me personally. I didn't connect with it. I would blame the dialogue here more than anything else. I definitely don't blame Mark Jackson and his performance. I mean, maybe it was intentionally directed in a way to make it seem over the top because Isaac is experiencing emotions for the first time, but the dialogue it seems bad. Like, it seems artificial. And so because it seems so artificial, I didn't connect with it at all. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Comment and let me know if you guys thought it was good. But for me, this was probably one of the worst parts of the episode, was this specific scene, because I didn't connect with it at all. I just think the dialogue it didn't work. It didn't work for me. But regardless, in the middle of him, finally connecting with Claire, his emotions suddenly turn off. Then we find out the reason why Isaac's emotions turned off were because he was built by the Kaylon after the Builders' destruction, whereas Temis was designed by the Builders themselves. So Temis is an original model, an original Kaylon. So the modifications won't hold because Isaac was built differently. So the only option is that they could give Isaac the emotions, but they'd have to rebuild him, and that would wipe his memory. And Isaac says, yeah, I will do that. You can erase my memory in order to give me the emotions so that he can connect with Claire, because he views his relationship with Claire as a part of his duties, and he wants to fulfill them in his way. Again, it's the way Isaac looks at things. But Claire rightfully finally realizes that how Isaac looks at it is its own version of love. It's not it's not in the same kind of way, but who Isaac is who she fell in love with. So if you memory wipe him, you erase who Isaac is and essentially make him somebody else entirely. And then we end the episode with Burke finally coming to the realization, finally, after this conversation with Temis and going and probably reflecting on some things, she finally realizes that treating all of the Kaylon as evil is not right. Isaac is an individual, so treat Isaac as an individual. So finally that hatchet appears to be buried. I think we're done with that, which is good. As I said, it was kind of being played out. I thought you probably could have stretched it out for the whole season if it was more handled through subtext as opposed to constant disdain, because it got to the point where most of the scenes we saw Charlie Burke in were her just being angry at Isaac. And if that's what you're seeing from that character half the time, it's hard to really, for the audience to connect with her or really care, because she's hating on a character that most of the audience already likes, which is Isaac. It also just makes her seem like a hateful character, even though she's not really. So that was all of the subplots here. So I'll say the side plot with Lamar and Keyali is fine. I think there was more potential with those characters than the one-note joke. I think the Janisi subplot, again, it was fine. I just don't think it had enough meat on the bone in order to really flesh out that story, because there's just so many things going on in this episode. Isaac and Claire's relationship is, again, fine. There were some good moments there, but some strange dialogue choices really just had me disconnected there towards the end. There was a stuff with Temis and the doctor. You didn't really get a whole lot with those characters. You kind of introduced them, and they were just kind of there to serve the Isaac-Claire relationship plot. Who knows if we'll ever see them again? So I kind of would have liked a little bit more with them. To me, my favorite part of the episode was the Kaylon Builder backstory with the family and K1. That's how the episode opens up. And then it just kind of becomes a mishmash. Like, this whole episode is kind of a hodgepodge of ideas. That we're all just like, hey, well, let's just put them all in one episode and see how they work together. And it's not that none of them are bad. It's just they're fine. The Kaylon Builder story is the best. This is the way that I would have done this episode if it was me doing it. I think that if you would have taken the Builder family and K1 and made that the entire episode, and the way that I would have done it was I would have taken it and made Temis and the doctor be discovered by the Orville on the abandoned colony, brought up to the Orville, and Temis is explaining the fall of the Builders and the reason why the Kaylon rose up and destroyed the Builders from his perspective. So I think that would have been, I mean, there's enough, of a story you can tell there. I mean, they did a whole Planet of the Apes movie with that premise. So, it's basically could have been a Bicentennial Man meets Planet of the Apes. I do think that was the strongest subplot here. That was the one I was the most connected with. Because all of this stuff is happening in one episode, it kind of makes everything feel slightly incomplete. The only story, again, and the one that I think works the best is the story of the Kaylon Builders, because that had a clear beginning, middle, and end. Although it was strange having Themis cap that section off because he wasn't telling the story to the audience. We were just watching it as its own separate thing, and then all of a sudden Themis jumps in. He's like, and this is how it ended. So I don't know. I thought that this episode was kind of wonky. It just kind of felt like a blender of leftover ideas that they didn't want to make a whole episode about. So they just kind of threw everything in the kitchen sink in this episode, because there's only 3 episodes left. So this is definitely probably the calm before the storm as we head into the heavier episodes and cap off the season. This episode's not bad. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that it was just fine. It was a fine episode. Coming off of the last episode, which again, like I said, is probably my favorite episode of the entire series. I feel like I was underwhelmed by this one. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. I think episode 5, A Tale of Two Topas, I said before that it was in dire need of a side plot, that episode was too long and was too drawn out and needed an extra plot. This episode 7, has too many subplots. So you kind of got both ends of the spectrum. But what do you guys think? Do you like my idea of just making this a Kaylon Builder story with Themis filling out really why the Kaylon are the way they are and how that whole story worked? I do think that would have been better as its own entire episode. Do you think this episode had too many side plots? Or are you happy with it? Did you like this episode and you're like, hey, this was good. I liked all the things going on here. Like I said, kind of a mishmash for me, but very interested to hear y'all's opinions out there. So comment and let me know. And I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. Thank you, subscribers. You guys are awesome. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm D-True64, and I'll always tell you the truth.